Christine is not someone who posts dramatic content on social media for attention. When she shared a video that her father's Ring doorbell camera had captured outside his apartment, it was because what the footage showed had genuinely unsettled the family, and because the explanation they had arrived at, that the source of the nightly disturbances was the neighbor, had only made the situation feel more unusual rather than less. The backstory behind the camera being installed in the first place is straightforward enough. Christine's father had been waking up to loud banging and crashing sounds outside his apartment at around 2 o'clock in the morning, night after night, with enough consistency that it stopped feeling like a one-off disturbance and started feeling like something that needed to be understood and addressed. The sounds were disruptive enough to pull him out of sleep regularly, and whatever was producing them was doing so at an hour when the rest of the building was quiet, and the source should have been easy to identify. He installed the Ring camera so that the next time it happened, he would have a record of what was causing it. When he reviewed the footage, he found his neighbor. The man was coming out of his apartment in the middle of the night and slamming his own door repeatedly for no apparent reason. Not once, not in the way someone might angrily close a door after a confrontation or a frustrating moment inside. Repeatedly, with a pattern and a consistency that the footage captured across multiple nights, and that had no obvious emotional or practical explanation attached to it. What made the footage genuinely unsettling wasn't the slamming itself, but the quality of the man's behavior while he was doing it. He appeared detached in a way that didn't sit comfortably with any straightforward interpretation. His manner was blank and disconnected, the movements mechanical in their repetition, as if he was operating on some internal instruction that had nothing to do with conscious decision-making. He looked, to the people who watched the footage, like someone who was not fully present in what he was doing. Christine posted the video, and the response was immediate and divided. A significant number of viewers accused her of staging the whole thing, arguing that the footage was too strange to be genuine, and that the most likely explanation was that she had constructed it for the attention that viral content generates. She responded to those accusations by uploading a second video, which showed the same behavior happening on a different night under the same circumstances. The neighbor, the early morning hours, the door, the same detached and repetitive slamming that had produced the sounds her father had been waking up to. The comment sections across both videos became a space where people worked through their own theories about what they were watching. Sleepwalking was the explanation that came up most frequently. The idea that the man was moving through a behavior pattern while in a state of sleep and had no awareness of what he was doing or how it registered to the people around him. Others pointed toward a medical condition called sundowning, a phenomenon associated with dementia that causes increased confusion, agitation, and unusual behavior specifically during the evening and nighttime hours, producing actions in affected individuals that can appear purposeful from the outside while having no deliberate intention behind them from the inside. Both explanations were plausible enough to attract genuine support, and both fit some aspects of what the footage showed while leaving other aspects unexplained. The situation then developed in a direction that added a different kind of strangeness to an already unusual story. Sometime after the videos spread widely online, Christine's father's doorbell camera captured the neighbor approaching the door, but this time not to engage in the behavior that had been documented. He had seen the viral footage. The assumption was that someone in the building or someone who knew him had seen it and made sure he was aware of it. And his response to discovering that his nightly behavior had been filmed, shared, and watched by a significant number of strangers, was to come to Christine's door and shout insults directly into the camera. The discomfort of being publicly documented, doing something you have no memory of or no explanation for, is something most people would find difficult to process gracefully, and his response to it was not graceful. But then he came back a second time, and this visit was entirely different from the first. He left an apology note on the door. The letter explained that he had been going through a difficult period in his life and that he had never intended to cause harm or distress to any of his neighbors. It was, by all accounts, a sincere and considered piece of communication from someone who understood that his behavior had affected the people around him and wanted to acknowledge that.
So a lot of you guys have been wanting this update on the door slamming guy at my dad's apartment. There honestly hasn't been too much activity going on due to the fact that we all believe that he may have seen the TikTok video as well as the apartment managers over there. He did write an apology letter and stuck it on my dad's door, which I'm going to show you guys a clip of that here in just a moment. The night before he stuck the apology letter on my dad's door, though, he did come up to the camera and say some provoking things. I will not be showing that clip for the respect of my dad's neighbor. They do live next door to this guy. But here's a clip of him putting the letter on my dad's door. In the apology letter, he did state that he has been going through a rough patch and that he didn't mean to cause any harm to any one of his neighbors.
Christine and her father received it in the spirit it was apparently offered, and the apology brought a degree of resolution to what had been a protracted and exhausting situation. What the letter didn't contain, and what has never been provided from any source connected to the incident, was an explanation for why the behavior had happened in the first place. He had been going through a rough patch, the letter said. He hadn't meant to cause trouble. But the specific question, why had he been walking outside his apartment at 2 a.m. every single night for several weeks and slamming his door repeatedly in a blank and mechanical trance-like state, was one he either couldn't answer or chose not to address. The behavior stopped after that. Christine confirmed that the nightly disturbances ended and that her father was no longer being woken up at 2 a.m. by sounds from the hallway. The neighbor returned to whatever version of ordinary life existed for him before the camera caught him in those early morning hours, and the footage remained online as a document of something that happened without anyone involved ever fully explaining what it actually was. The real reason behind those nights has never been given, and in the absence of an explanation, every theory that the comments sections generated remains as plausible as it was on the day the first video was posted. Before we move on, if you're enjoying these real disturbing cases, take a second to subscribe. We upload new creepy videos every week, and trust me, the next 3 cases are even harder to explain. Picture waking up on an ordinary August morning in a quiet Virginia suburb, stepping out to grab the paper or walk the dog, and finding a television sitting on your porch. Not a note, not a delivery slip, just an old, boxy CRT television sitting there like it had always belonged. Now picture that same scene playing out at 50 other houses across the neighborhood, all on the same night. That's exactly what happened in Henrico County, Virginia, in August 2019, and it kicked off one of the strangest unsolved mysteries a quiet American suburb has ever produced. It started the way most modern mysteries do, with people checking their doorbell cameras. 50-plus households across the community woke up to the same bizarre discovery. And naturally, the first instinct for anyone with a security camera was to scroll back and see who or what had left it there. What they found on the footage didn't make things any less confusing. It showed a man moving calmly and methodically from house to house, carrying an old television in his arms, setting it down carefully by each front door before walking on to repeat the process at the next home. There was nothing rushed or chaotic about it. He moved like someone completing a job, working his way down the street with the kind of quiet, deliberate rhythm you'd expect from a delivery route, not a prank in progress. And then there's the detail that turned this from a strange but ultimately harmless bit of neighborhood mischief into something genuinely unsettling. The man wasn't just carrying a television, he was wearing one. An old TV set pulled down over his own head, completely obscuring his face, turning him into something that looked ripped straight out of a video game or a low-budget horror film. His movements, already odd in their calm, mechanical precision, took on a whole new level of eeriness once paired with that image. A faceless figure with a television for a head, wandering a sleepy residential street in the middle of the night, dropping off more televisions as he went. What really pushed the story into viral territory wasn't just that he did this. It's that he clearly knew he was being watched and didn't care. He wasn't trying to avoid the cameras or keep to blind spots the way you'd expect from someone hoping to pull this off without being noticed. At one point, caught clearly on one homeowner's doorbell camera, he turns, faces the lens directly, and waves. A simple, casual wave, the kind of gesture you'd give a neighbor across the street, except here it was coming from a man with a television covering his entire head. Mid-delivery of dozens of unsolicited old TVs to strangers' homes in the dead of night. Understandably, once word got around and the footage started circulating, the response from residents was somewhere between bewildered and alarmed. 50 televisions showing up overnight, delivered by someone deliberately concealing his identity, was enough to make people nervous about what exactly they were dealing with. Police were called in, and given the scale and strangeness of it, they treated the situation seriously. Officers went door to door collecting every single television that had been left behind, driven by a real concern that any one of them could have been rigged with something dangerous: wiring, explosives, anything that could turn a bizarre prank into a genuine public safety threat. What they found instead was almost anticlimactic. Nothing suspicious turned up in any of the sets. No wiring that shouldn't have been there. No hidden devices. Nothing that suggested any kind of malicious intent behind the operation. In fact, several of the televisions were checked and found to be in working condition, old but functional. The kind of set you might actually plug in and watch if you didn't mind the outdated technology. Whoever had done this hadn't scavenged 50 broken TVs from a landfill and dumped them as some kind of act of vandalism. These were, by all appearances, real televisions that someone had gone out of their way to acquire. In the end, no charges were ever filed. Authorities who reviewed the situation ultimately chalked it up to nothing more than an elaborate, unusually committed prank, closing the door on any criminal investigation. But closing the case legally didn't answer the question that's kept this story alive in true crime and mystery circles ever since. Why would anyone spend real money sourcing dozens of old CRT televisions, some of them apparently in working order, purely to distribute them anonymously across an entire neighborhood in the middle of the night, all while dressed as a walking television themselves? There's no indication anyone ever figured out the answer. No follow-up reporting ever surfaced identifying the man behind the mask. No motive was ever confirmed, and no one has come forward publicly, then or since, to take credit for it or explain what the point of the whole operation actually was. It remains exactly what it looked like from the very first night residents discovered those televisions waiting on their porches. A strange, fully committed act carried out in near total silence, by someone who clearly wanted to be seen doing it, but never wanted to be known. A man wearing a television on his head was bizarre enough, but the next encounter removes people from the equation entirely, because sometimes the creepiest thing isn't someone acting strangely. It's discovering you might not have been alone in the first place. Some places don't just hold history, they hold something else alongside it, something that lingers long after the tour groups leave and the doors are locked for the night. Lincoln Cathedral is one of those places. Standing for nearly 1,000 years over the city it was built to watch over, and on one quiet visit, a man walked through its empty halls and came face to face with something that had no business being there. He'd gone in expecting exactly what most people expect from a centuries-old cathedral after hours: stone, silence, the particular stillness that comes from a space built for reverence rather than conversation. Then the bell started ringing. There was nothing to explain it. No one visible pulling a rope, no scheduled toll that would account for it going off in that moment, at that hour, with him standing alone in the quiet. It rang anyway, cutting through the stillness of the cathedral in a way that immediately shifted the entire mood of the visit from peaceful, and it was right around that same moment, with the sound still hanging in the air, that he saw it. A face, peering out from behind a corner, watching him the way something watches when it doesn't want to be caught looking. From where he stood, it read as human. The shape, the positioning, everything about it initially registering as nothing more than another visitor who ducked out of sight, maybe caught off guard by the sudden ringing of the bell. And that's when the face was gone. Not stepped back out of view behind the corner, the way a person would if they'd simply been startled and retreated. Gone, without a trace. No footsteps retreating down the corridor. No door closing somewhere to account for a quick exit. Nothing left behind to suggest anyone had ever actually been standing there at all. For anyone familiar with the building's history, the location alone adds weight to what he saw. The sighting took place near the cloister, the quiet, covered walkway that would have once been walked daily by the monks who lived and worked within the cathedral's walls for generations. It's exactly the kind of space where stories like this tend to take root, a place soaked in centuries of quiet, repetitive ritual. Whether that face belonged to a ghost, another visitor, or simply a trick of the light will probably never be known. But the next video is far more unsettling, because whatever happened wasn't inside a 1,000-year-old cathedral. It happened inside someone's own bedroom. A man had just gotten back from work, the kind of evening where all you want is to unwind. And that's exactly what he was doing, sitting in his room, relaxed, catching up with a friend. Nothing about the moment suggesting the night was going to turn into anything other than an ordinary end to an ordinary day. He settled in, Bible open, working through a passage the way he probably had countless nights before, and that's when the cupboard in his room moved. Before he even had time to fully process what had just happened, his bedroom door swung shut. No draft strong enough to account for a door closing with that kind of decisiveness. No one else in the room who could have pushed it closed as a joke. Nothing to explain it away as something ordinary. Just the door, closed, sealing him inside a room that only moments earlier had felt completely normal and was now feeling like anything but. It's what he did next that stuck with anyone who's seen the footage. Rather than freeze entirely or scramble for the door to check if it would even open again, he reached for something that clearly meant something to him. A cross, a symbol of his faith. What makes this kind of footage resonate the way it does isn't spectacle. There's no swirling mist, no distorted crawling figure, none of the dramatic visual markers that usually define this kind of content. It's the ordinariness of the setting that does the work. A man in his own bedroom, doing something as simple and personal as reading scripture after a long day, interrupted by something that offers no explanation and leaves no trace. The furniture moving and the door shutting aren't dramatic on their own, but together, in that sequence, in that context, they carry a weight that's hard to shake. He never got an answer that night, and by every indication, he still hasn't. The cupboard didn't move again. The door, once reopened, worked exactly as it always had. Nothing about the room gave any further indication that anything unusual had happened there at all, which somehow makes it worse rather than better. No follow-up disturbance to confirm what he already suspected, just silence, and the memory of holding up a cross to an empty room that had, seconds earlier, felt like it wasn't empty at all. A man in Dubai walked into an unfinished construction site alone at night. And what happened next is the reason people can't stop talking about this footage. There was nothing unusual about the decision at first. Half-built towers sit all over the city, empty concrete shells waiting on their next phase of construction, and slipping into one after the workday ends is the kind of impulsive, mildly reckless thing people do for a thrill. Then the sound started.
Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ah!
That's when he saw it. A shadow, forming in open air, with nothing nearby to cast it. No structure, no object, no light source positioned anywhere that could explain a shape like that appearing out of nothing in the middle of an unfinished room. It held there long enough for him to register it fully, long enough for it to stop being something he could rationalize away as a trick of tired eyes in a dark building. And then it moved, not drifting aimlessly, but rising, heading up toward the exposed terrace level above him, disappearing from where he stood into the open night air overhead. Alone, with no one beside him to confirm what he'd just seen, no one to share that instant of pure disbelief with, he did the only thing that made sense in that moment. He ran. Getting out of an unfinished building in the dark isn't easy under the best circumstances. Missing railings, exposed edges, uneven concrete underfoot, all the ordinary dangers of an active construction site that don't disappear just because someone's suddenly desperate to leave. Alone, with adrenaline overriding every rational thought, he pushed through all of it, retracing his path back through the stairwell, past the spot where the sound first caught his attention, and out into the open air outside the structure, not stopping until there was real distance between himself and whatever he'd left behind on that terrace. Nobody went back with him afterward. Nobody else saw what he saw, which is exactly what makes this footage so hard to dismiss and so hard to fully believe at the same time. There's no second witness to corroborate the shadow, and no other angle to confirm the sound had a source beyond his own account of that night. Just one man, alone in an empty building, and whatever it was that rose up toward that terrace and vanished before he could see anything more. Skeptics will point to the obvious. Wind moving through an unfinished structure creates sound in ways that can trick anyone's ears, and shifting light from the city beyond can throw shapes that look far stranger in the moment than they would if examined calmly in daylight. But none of that fully explains a shadow with no light to cast it, rising with clear direction rather than simply appearing and fading on its own. What's left is his account, the sound he never identified, and the shape that sent one man running alone through an unfinished building in the dead of night, leaving whatever waited on that terrace exactly where he last saw it, and never going back to find out what it actually was. Some roads have a reputation that goes far beyond their sharp turns and endless stretches of asphalt. They become places surrounded by stories, whispered legends, and unexplained events that continue to puzzle everyone who hears about them. Whether those stories are based on coincidence, imagination, or something that truly defies explanation, they often leave people wondering if there is more to these locations than meets the eye. One such road in Arizona has gained attention for exactly that reason. Known by many as a highway with a haunting history, it has been linked to countless strange sightings and mysterious accidents over the years. While skeptics dismiss these reports as nothing more than rumors, others believe the road hides secrets that cannot easily be explained. A dashcam recording captured in 2024 has only added to the mystery, leaving viewers with more questions than answers. The footage begins like any ordinary nighttime drive. A vehicle moves steadily along a quiet highway surrounded by darkness, with only the headlights cutting through the night. There is nothing unusual about the scene at first. The road appears calm, traffic is minimal, and everything seems perfectly normal. It is the kind of journey that thousands of drivers make every day without dashcam anything out of the ordinary. However, this particular stretch of highway is far from ordinary in the eyes of local residents and paranormal enthusiasts. For years, stories have circulated about unexplained encounters taking place along this road. Drivers have reported seeing strange lights floating in the distance, shadowy figures standing near the roadside, and mysterious objects that disappear before anyone can get close enough to identify them. Some people even believe the unusual number of accidents in the area cannot be explained by normal road conditions alone. While there is no scientific evidence supporting these claims, the legends continue to grow with every new story that emerges. On the night this footage was recorded, a man named Moran was driving along the highway with his dashboard camera running as usual. Like many drivers, he likely installed the camera for safety reasons, never imagining it would record something that would attract widespread attention. The drive appeared uneventful until a brief moment changed everything. As the vehicle continued forward, something unusual appeared near the side of the road. At first glance, it looked like a gray shape standing just beyond the reach of the headlights. The appearance was so sudden that many viewers watching the footage repeatedly questioned whether they had missed it during the earlier frames. Careful examination revealed something that made the sighting even more unsettling. The figure had not been standing there all along. Instead, it appeared almost instantly, as if it had materialized out of thin air. This unexpected appearance became the most disturbing aspect of the recording. Normally, if a person or animal is standing beside a road, subtle movement can be detected before they become fully visible in the headlights. In this case, there seemed to be no gradual reveal. One moment, the roadside appeared completely empty, and the next, a strange gray figure occupied the exact location. The mysterious shape immediately sparked intense discussion online. Curious viewers slowed the footage down frame by frame, hoping to uncover a logical explanation. Some suggested it might have been a trick of the light caused by the vehicle's headlights reflecting off an object. Others proposed that shadows, camera compression, or video artifacts could have created an optical illusion. While these explanations remain possible, many viewers believed they did not fully account for the figure's unusual appearance. To investigate further, the footage was digitally enhanced and zoomed in to reveal additional details. Rather than providing clear answers, the enhancement only deepened the mystery. The figure appeared gray in color and possessed an unusual outline that did not closely resemble a human being. It also lacked the recognizable features typically associated with animals commonly found near highways, such as deer, coyotes, or other wildlife. Its proportions appeared unfamiliar, making identification even more difficult. The figure seemed to have an oddly shaped body, without clearly visible facial features or natural movement. Instead of helping experts identify the object, the improved footage left people even more uncertain about what they were seeing. One of the reasons this video continues to attract attention is the timing of the figure's appearance. If the object had gradually entered the frame from the darkness, viewers might have concluded it was simply an animal wandering near the road. Instead, the apparent lack of movement before it became visible creates the unsettling impression that it emerged from nowhere. Whether this effect resulted from limitations of the camera or something genuinely unusual remains impossible to determine with certainty. As expected, opinions quickly became divided. Skeptics argued that modern digital cameras can occasionally produce strange visual distortions, particularly during nighttime recording when lighting conditions are poor. Compression artifacts, motion blur, and sudden exposure adjustments are all capable of creating misleading images that appear mysterious at first glance. According to this perspective, the figure may simply be an ordinary object captured under unusual circumstances. Others, however, remain unconvinced by these explanations. They point to the long history of reported sightings along the same highway, suggesting that this recording may represent another unexplained encounter in a location already surrounded by mystery. While individual eyewitness accounts cannot always be verified, the consistency of similar stories over many years encourages some people to believe there could be more to the legends than coincidence. The human mind naturally searches for explanations when confronted with the unknown. Throughout history, mysterious sightings have inspired myths, folklore, and countless investigations. Sometimes the answer eventually turns out to be surprisingly ordinary, while in other cases, the available evidence remains too limited to reach a definitive conclusion. This recording falls into that second category, where certainty remains out of reach despite careful analysis. Without additional camera angles or independent witnesses, determining exactly what appeared beside the road is nearly impossible. The brief nature of the encounter means investigators have little evidence beyond a few seconds of video. Although technology can enhance image quality, it cannot recreate details that were never captured in the original recording. Years from now, this dashcam footage may still be discussed alongside other unexplained highway encounters that continue to fascinate viewers around the world. Whether it represents an optical illusion, an unidentified object, an unusual animal, or something entirely beyond current understanding, it has certainly succeeded in capturing people's curiosity. The unanswered questions remain the most compelling part of the story. If the figure was not a person and did not resemble any known animal, then what exactly appeared beside that lonely Arizona highway? Until stronger evidence emerges, the mystery remains unsolved, inviting every viewer to examine the footage and decide for themselves what they believe truly happened on that dark and silent stretch of road. And those were 6 of the most disturbing videos caught on camera. Which case disturbed you the most? Was it something that could be explained, or do you think some of these clips defy logic? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this countdown, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.